ho, ho, I think we're live. I think we're live. What's up, everybody? Let's just make sure we are live here. I am using some new streaming software, of which I know little to nothing about. So, let's do our due diligence. Make sure that I am actually live. Oh, content live. And is it? Oh, it looks like we're live. We got some sound? Yeah? Shall we? Shall we? Ooh, beautiful. We are live. Wonderful. Wonderful. Let's mute you. Okay. Well, depending on what platform you are joining in on, welcome. We are live on, I am live on LinkedIn as well as Facebook now. And, of course, my home YouTube. So, what is going on? Happy New Year to everyone out there. Just got back from a lovely long cruise, so fully refreshed, ready to fire this up. I think I was a little overzealous here to attempt to start a series, I guess you will, a weekly series right before the new year with everything going on then, and really having no plans. So, new year, new me, yeah, no. But in reality here, I wanted to get back to the grind. Last video I have is, it seems like forever now, December 6th, which was, believe it or not, the episode 1 of the Let's Talk Mold series. So, listening in on I'd like to call him a colleague, but in reality, we met via YouTube, and we've really only conversed, I think, via YouTube as well as LinkedIn. But that is HVACR videos. If you guys are not already subscribed to his channel, or at the very least checked out some of his content, he's got some excellent content when it comes to the HVAC industry. But he said something that kind of resonated with me and hit home, which is he was kind of getting bored, or at least alluding to the fact that he's kind of getting bored of doing these weekly live streams, to which he attributes in part to the fact that he kind of came on and used this as a weekly discussion to, for Q&A, right? Answer questions, discuss some things that might be going on, et cetera, et cetera. Clarky Brown is sending me a message. No, I didn't trick you. We got another feed there, Clark. You'll find it. But anyway, so he was mentioning about the fact that he was kind of getting bored with it, and one of the driving forces, there are driving reasons, was the fact that he kind of came on to have some Q&A, and if it was there, great. If it wasn't there, it was kind of, maybe not ideal. So then he started talking about what he might have done differently, or what he might transition to, which is basically, starting to have a theme for that week. So, love to take credit here, but the theme idea that I came up with was actually inspired by him. So, big shout out. Thank you, sir. HVACR videos on YouTube. So this week, we are going to be talking about none other than the biggest topic at hand, at least if you're within the restoration industry, as well as the plumbing industry, is Winter Storm Elliot. Now, for those of you who don't know, many of you do know, but I'm now working with a larger industrial hygiene firm, handling everything from your traditional IH services all the way up to what has become their claim to fame with respect to the moisture mapping services. So my responsibility with said company is to handle or fulfill a position of the director of large loss, right? So what this means is basically I am in part part of the logistical system that figures out where we're going to deploy subcontractors when needed, where we're going to deploy our existing personnel within the company. A lot of that falls on our operations manager, but definitely jump in and assist when I can. And ultimately, Winter Storm Elliot was just like there was a plan, like Mike Tyson says, right? Everyone has a plan and then you get punched in the face, and this storm did not disappoint. So I did mention down in the description, we've got everything from, there was already surpassed, I think, 60 deaths last time I checked, and it might be a little bit, outdated by now. I mean, it's probably more, but multiple states declaring state of emergencies here. Just the challenges. I mean, there were so many challenges, which is a little bit of something that I want to get into this video. But first and foremost, what I just wanted to do was just anyone who's not on here, like Clark, I want to make sure that you at least saw the updated link. Updated event. Check my Facebook and other social. We're live. All right, so got at least one supporter, so I got to make sure that Clarky Clark knows how to find me here. Nonetheless, Winter Storm Elliot is the biggest factor with this storm. Is it wasn't even so much just the amount of pipe breaks that you had within a given area. It was the fact that we had all of these pipe bursts within this state, and then that state, and then that state. And it was, I mean, across a lot of the United States here. I mean, I threw in the description here, I mean, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, some of the bases actually had pipe bursts. North Carolina and New York. I mean, this thing was about as widespread as it gets. Now, the crazy thing about it is, as a result of its widespread nature, posed some of the challenges. Speaking with some of my colleagues at ServPro for one, and there were others, finding an asbestos contractor, somebody that could come in and perform ACM sampling before they actually go and start swinging the hammers. Believe it or not, there are companies out there, like we all should be doing, who will not swing a hammer, remove a baseboard, break anything without first having ACM or asbestos-containing materials sampling performed before they actually start said work. So kudos to everyone out there who is doing it. There are still a lot of us in this industry that need to get up on that level. I've got my close, near and dear colleague, brother from another mother, as many of you know, Dave Luce with Luce Air Quality up there in Jacksonville. He's been a big proponent of this. He's definitely not the first. There's been many before him, but he's also starting this, starting the fight, the good fight. Restoration advisors, the subject triggers me. Oh, I bet it does. So, restoration advisors, I'm going to assume that is you, Clark, who's actually present. Could be Toby, but I'm going to assume Clark. Now, I am curious to know what actually triggers you. If we can keep it a little bit PG here, I definitely want to have some of the communication going through. If I can only find the comments section of my area. It is Clark. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So there is a comment section within OBS. Clark, if you are watching this, sir, I hope that you are enjoying this. This is like live stream 101 or how not to do it. But anyway, I will find the comments section eventually, or just send me messages, or we'll get through this here and it'll get better week over week. But ACM testing, which is probably the subject that is actually triggering Clark, because I know he's also a big proponent of education here. He was also a bit of the inspiration behind the live streaming, I guess you'd say. So we've got him. We've got John Isaacson with the Diojo podcast who does one as well. So number of folks out there that have kind of led the way and paved the path that I'm just kind of following in the footsteps. Really, I am jumping into a weekly live stream, essentially just so I can kind of force myself to be more regimented when it comes to actually producing content. So I've always strived for the 2 videos a week. As you can see, I've fell miserably on my face with maybe 2 videos a month. So we're trying to kind of get into the swing of things here. But Winter Storm Elliot, with that being the topic, and guys, by all means, I picked a topic. I want to talk about it, but for me to talk about an individual topic for an hour, at this point 50 minutes, would be impressive. Needless to say, I'm going to run out of things. Needless to say, I'm going to go down rabbit holes here. So anything you guys want to talk about, feel free to chime in. So Clark's making some comments here with authentic laws and education still chose. Yeah, so I mean, and I hate to say it, I mean, I'm one and many others there that over the years in the past, I mean, there was a point, right, where we didn't know, or I shouldn't say that because we could have always found out, but there was a point where we can say we didn't know about asbestos testing. But then everybody, you know, once it kind of falls on your doorstep and then you're made aware of it, it's like, what do you do? But Winter Storm Elliot is kind of shifting focus there. That was probably one of the biggest hurdles that I heard was actual restoration companies wanting to do the right thing and then trying to actually find not even reputable contractors, just folks that are effectively licensed and certified to come out and do things like perform asbestos testing. We're not quite at the point, or maybe we are, but it's not being discussed as much. I should say the mold, right? What's going to be the underlying issue or the resulting factor here, because where there's water, there's going to be mold. So guarantee you within the coming weeks, we're going to start talking about mold from all the areas that either weren't dried properly or might have been missed, or quite frankly, you know, you've got lots of folks out there that maybe had a little bit of a leak and they thought they handled it themselves, didn't bring out a professional. That is potentially going to be a disaster as well. But my experience, at least thus far, with the winter storm, number one, I was on vacation for somehow, some way, I snuck away for 8 nights, 9 days in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean. Absolutely fantastic. Those that are close to me know I was sending you pictures and everything. Anybody else wants pictures, let me know. I've got some beautiful pictures of British Virgin Islands. What do we got? St. Martin. It's St. Thomas. It was just absolutely fantastic. But amidst that cruise, probably the latter half of the time there, I was kind of jumping in, working with my colleague at the industrial hygiene company, and we were working to find subcontractors on such short notice. It wasn't like traditional events where you've got a hurricane that we know is going to hit, so then we start preparing, right? We did have a period of time where we knew that we had this cold front coming through. A lot of folks that are watching this on Facebook, you probably already know the usual suspects that did post about the fact, hey, everybody get ready, we're going to have these pipe bursts, this killer freeze, or I shouldn't say killer, but just this terrible freeze that's going to come through and wreak havoc, which, general disclaimer, nobody actually wishes for. Yes, as a restoration contractor, it is our livelihood. We are certainly in that business, and that business is what pays our bills. But contrary to popular belief, we don't actually sit around singing Kumbaya saying, cannot wait for these pipes to burst. And if you do that, probably not somebody I want to associate with. But unfortunately, it is one of the factors of Mother Nature, right? When you have that cold snap that's going to come through, so many of these plumbing systems are going to have failures, and then we're going to have exactly what we have. Where, like I said, we've got military bases all the way down to residential homes, condominiums, duplexes, the multi-unit residences. I mean, across many of these states that have just wreaked absolute havoc on so many of these folks. Some that have insurance, some that don't have insurance. It's a very unique situation here, but the definitely some things that could already be learned about this. But we had the last winter storm, which was, I think, around February, if I'm not mistaken, of last year. That one was a bit different because that was pretty localized. I mean, one of the hardest hit areas that I can recall was going to be was Texas, Austin, Texas. I think specifically is a area that I spent quite a bit of time there. Versus this is kind of a little bit different for me, in that fulfilling a logistical position and working with some of the best and brightest contractors and subcontractors that are out there. I've been able to kind of plant my feet behind this computer and 4 monitors here that you guys aren't seeing. But nonetheless, there are guys. We've got guys. I mean, I've got my spreadsheet here, which you guys can't see, but just I'll reference it for example. I mean, we've got people working in Kentucky, North Carolina. We've got some, it looks like, up in New York. So, I mean, already within our company, I mean, we're touching 3 different states, and there's actually a 4th one that I know I'm forgetting at the moment. But it was, it's definitely something that's a little intimidating in the sense that you kind of go from 0 to 100, right? And I am still very new to the large loss scene, right? Don't let the title fool you, director of large loss. This does not mean Josh is the god of large loss, because I'll tell you right now, there are plenty of people out there that will run circles around me. The difference being is this company, and rightfully so, I think I'm doing an excellent job, found confidence in me to actually handle that managerial position, working with subcontractors, which if you have not worked with subcontractors out there in large loss events, there's something to be said about that, because within this industry, there is, for anyone not in the industry, let me say, if you're within the industry, you kind of know. There's a lot of backstabbing that goes on. There's a lot of unpaid bills. Some of us are speaking from experience. Some of us are not. We've just kind of heard it through the grapevine. But it's a very mischievous industry that we're a part of here, right? And sometimes it's not necessarily the intention of the lead contractor to screw the subcontractor, but if they kind of go into it with pretty empty pockets to begin with, and then their client doesn't pay them, likely because of something that they did wrong, whether it's lack of documentation or something, I've seen it, and I've heard that, or not heard, but I have firsthand accounts from individuals that just unfortunately could not get paid from that contractor because that contractor did not get paid. And while it's not right, it's further evidence that the large loss scene is not cut out for everyone. Myself included, when it comes to my little remediation company that I own down here in South Florida, I know better than to take that show on the road, leave my home base, and kind of pack up a ton of equipment and actually go work a large loss scene. I know, pardon my French, I would have my ass handed to me. Number one, I don't know the legalities when it comes to every other state out there. I know a couple, just because, I've been exposed to Texas now, Louisiana, and things like that. But if you think that I'm going to load up my small arsenal of vehicles, drive to another state I know nothing about, maybe run some Google ads, and then just kind of start working, there's absolutely no way. I would be upside down. I'd have to pay back all my guys on all of the labor that they worked. And then what? Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll collect because I did everything that happened to be correct. So, again, I say that because I just want to make it abundantly clear what my position is, where my levels of expertise are, and where they are not. Clark Brown, who's on this podcast, is probably one of the best individuals that I know, and I'm not going to out his history on here on some of the big players he's worked with and so forth, but that gentleman has large loss experience, right? So his coaching and consultant practice that he actually has, it comes from, I'm sure, experiences of his own, as well as things that he's learned after the fact that he could do better. So it's guys like that I've kind of picked things off of, and that's helped me to be really successful in this, right? Because it does not take a rocket scientist to handle a logistics position when it comes to the large loss scene, but what it does require is it requires good relationships with individuals, right? Being personable, being honest, understanding that, hey, just as much as you've got my back when I call on you, I've got your back if something goes wrong. So when these types of events happen, Winter Storm Elliot, Hurricane Ian, any of these things, you really have to come together. Yes, there are tons of contractors out there jockeying for the work, but I'll tell you, already in the short, going on 15 years now, give or take, experience that I have within the restoration industry, and especially of late, the market's actually pretty small. The people you really want to associate with is just kind of ever decreasing. I mean, it is a small circle. I mean, if you've ever seen Meet the Fockers, you've got that circle. Like, you want to be in there. It's a tight knit restoration community. There are a ton of players out there. Clark made a comment, for whatever I know, there is a world more that I don't. Yeah, so right there. I mean, a little humble brag there from Clark. Kudos to everyone who does this live streaming thing, because I mean, you're on the camera for an hour here, right? So there's so much that I edit out of my videos, but you're getting the live raw version of me here. But large loss scene, Winter Storm Elliot. I mean, these are events that happen. Now let's for a second, let's just talk about, unfortunately, and I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but I'm gonna look it up out of curiosity. Winter Storm 2021. I don't remember what the death toll was there, but I don't think it was anything like this. I mean, and a lot of these, from what I'm reading, Buffalo, New York. Yeah, so February 16th, February 13th, North American winter storm. Yeah, so it looks like there were 20 direct fatalities and 13 indirect fatalities, assuming this is the same one that we were talking about that hit Texas. But needless to say, I mean, it's 3 times that. It wasn't anything to play around with. And I mean, my heart goes out to everyone that physically lost someone during this event, because yes, pipe leaks you'll recover from, right? Even if you have the most botch remediation service known to man, you can rebound from that, right? You can come back, but what you can't come back from is, loss of life, unfortunately. So anybody who is out there, of course, that did suffer from this firsthand, a loved one, a friend, my condolences. I mean, I don't want to, for any 1 second, tell you that I understand or can relate. But just in excess of 60 people, man, that's like, that's real life. That is, we're not just talking about bursting pipes here. We're talking about, and I don't know the specifics, but probably just the lack of heat and things like that, lack of power. I mean, we're talking hypothermia, and I could only imagine what else comes from it. But what I can speak to, and like I said in the topic here, I'm going to stick to what I know, is the restoration process. We already know one of the challenges here was getting a contractor or contractors in a widespread disaster event to your local area to be able to perform asbestos testing on your jobs. For anybody that was looking to have bacterial sampling on your jobs. Again, the company I work with, and there's others out there, but the company I work with could only physically get to so many areas. Now, this wasn't really a bacteria-ridden event in the sense that, we had a lot of freshwater pipes that burst, as opposed to historically during hurricane events, Hurricane Ian and things like that. We've got these swirling winds that come around. They pick up everything from the grass, right? You've got pesticides that are sprayed there. You've got all kinds of environmental contamination on the exterior that gets picked up with these winds, gets mixed in with the rain. And then you've got this just this rain and wind shear that presses it into these crevices, whether it's floodwaters that come in, which absolutely, hands down, we already know within the industry is going to be Category 3 water. It's just grossly contaminated, to the other things that a lot of people don't even think about, which is, water being driven in from windows and lifted portions of roofing and things like that. I mean, a lot of that carries bacteria in there. So we've got a lot of contractors out there that are doing sewage screens for that, but I'll tell you what, and I mean, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag here, but you're kind of missing a lot if you're only going in and doing sewage screens. There's an absolute ton of bacteria out there. But what I will say is, I mean, as long as you're doing something more than just going in and dropping dehumidifiers and blowers and air movers, as we all know, it seems to be the topic of our industry is, yeah, they just came out, they dropped a ton of equipment, and, they came back a month later and, they pulled out all the equipment. It's like, okay, well, what transpired over the month, and what physically took a month to actually do this? So, again, with this being a pretty isolated to fresh water pipes, unless there's somebody out there that had a different experience from the restoration viewpoint, My experience was that we've got, cold water, hot water lines that actually bursted. Yeah, Clark, those are not our people. And from that, we had fresh water that went and just kind of went throughout the residences. I mean, sometimes buildings, commercial properties. I mean, I saw some videos online from some colleagues, some that are doing extreme large loss. And you guys know who you are out there if you've seen it. I mean, I don't need to say anything other than Aaron Foreman was one of the leaders in that segment. And I mean, just the sheer chaos that that man and his company and even others like them walk into is just unheard of. Drying out stadiums and or arenas and things like that. I mean, but just looking at some of these videos of some of the little more milder events, I mean, you had pipes that burst, ceilings that just effectively exploded, and it was just water absolutely everywhere. So to the point where some people don't, barely have time to even react to things, let alone, figure out how to shut off the water and it's, you name it. It's an absolute disaster. Having only experienced one active pipe leak myself, other than seeing a guy accidentally put a hammer through a wall and hit it. But believe it or not, back here in the back of my kitchen, I had a water line that was starting to leak, and it didn't burst. So I can only imagine what that thing would have looked like coming out full force. But anyway, yeah, it's. I mean, I could go on and on when it comes to this stuff here. Let's see. I mean, let me jump on first and foremost to Facebook here, and let me see if I have any comments even coming in on that. Anybody who's out there that's actually watching this video that has some different experiences. I mean, this is kind of what I'd like to see. So Clark has got that shared. I appreciate the love, Clark. Bum, 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 bum. Let's see how we can navigate this. And guys, I do promise to get better as we progress here. So let's see. John Skelly. We got that going on. Yeah, that would be something to see. Of those that gave up their Christmas. Oh, yeah. I mean, you definitely have that, Clark. So, I mean, I, for one, know that I had it a lot better than many others out there, in the sense that I was on a lovely cruise while, let's call it the floodwaters, or the floodgates actually helped, or excuse me, not helped. That's what I get for multitasking. Like I said, I was on a cruise when most of this came in, so, I mean, I had a great Christmas, and unfortunately, I hate to say that because I know a lot of you out there were kind of knees deep in water and helping people kind of restore some of what they had going on. But like Clark's talking about, there are just absolute so many out there that I know gave up their Christmas. I mean, shoot, gave up their New Year's. I talked to our operations manager at the company, and he was telling me how, I mean, fortunately, on one of the projects that they had, they were fortunate enough to have off January 1st, but prior to that, it was, balls to the wall, and January 2nd on, it was balls to the wall. So, anybody who's in the restoration industry knows, and again, let's talk about Aaron Foreman. Let's talk about, I always forgot the power couple out there. Drawing a blank on their name, but you'll know who I am. Or excuse me, you'll know who they are. I mean, anybody who's signed up for the restoration industry pretty much knows what to expect, and if they don't know what to expect, it's going to dawn upon them pretty quick. There is no just disappear, not worry about anything, phones on silent, phones off. I mean, it is just, unfortunately, when duty calls, you got to respond, and if you're not in a position to, you gotta make it happen and figure out a way to get it done. So for all the folks that did work the long days like Clark's talking about, it's absolutely gruesome. But let me I had my little fun fact sheet here, which when I restarted my computer, it disappeared on me. Winter Storm Elliot. So that is what I wanted to see. There you are. So, I had a couple of things that I was looking about. So there it is. So, with regard to Winter Storm Elliot, it was kind of, I don't want to say it was kind of funny, but I was looking at some of the information that we have online, and it's like, you always see in a lot of these events, right? You always have the powers that be warning us, right? The general population that is not part of the restoration industry warning us. Make sure you hire a reputable company. Make sure you look them up. Make sure you go to Better Business Bureau. Make sure. Grain of salt, right? Because within these events, whether it is a flood type event like we had here with the pipe leaks, or whether it is a hurricane related event, or even a tornado for that matter, number one, in so many instances, there is a massive shortage of restoration contractors. Believe it or not, right? There are a ton of us out there, and we are everywhere. But the problem is we cannot be everywhere at once. So we may have a certain area that, let's say a given part of Florida, right? You might have everyone over in the Naples area, and then what's going on with Sanibel Island? It's being neglected. There's just an absolute shortage of contractors. Same could be said about the Fort Lauderdale area, Daytona. I mean, when we had Hurricane Ian come through, that right there was proof in the pudding that there just were not enough restoration contractors to do some of the work that happened. And in the grand scheme of things, I mean, yeah, that hurricane came through and hit a lot of areas, but there's been quite a bit more disaster done from other named events. And I don't want to say I have a bone to pick, but what I will say to the general consumers out there is you should absolutely do your due diligence, like you see here on one of these .gov websites. Make sure the company does exist. Search online the company's name, words like scam, complaint, things like that. I totally agree with that, but I think it's twofold. I think the restoration industry needs to be a little more understanding of when we come into foreign territory and not knowing the area, as well as I think we need to not scare consumers as much. I think we should educate consumers. I definitely do. I'm a big proponent of education, but I don't think we should necessarily scare consumers into thinking that all out-of-state contractors are bad, because then what that's going to do, unfortunately, for the local contractor at face value, they're going to love it. They're going to think more work for me. But in reality, you're actually putting a major damper on the residents within that local area, because then what's going to happen is they're not going to be able to get the resources that they need quick enough, right? We've got a term called mitigation in our industry. Not remediation, but mitigation, which is part of the restoration industry. And mitigating is effectively preventing further damages from occurring, versus remediation is more of a reactive state or a response to an event. When we have mold, we remediate the mold. When we have water, we mitigate the water damage to prevent the mold. So it's more of a precursor. So I don't know, and I can't speak from experience on this. Hello, Robert Moore. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Maybe Clark, I don't know if you know, or maybe Robert too, if you have anything you want to chime in here. Do either one of you, as well as anyone else that's watching, I mean, was there any feedback on how receptive folks have been in states? I mean, a lot of what I've been hearing has been on the industrial hygiene side, so I can't speak to the restoration or remediation side. Basically, what I'm asking is, do we have a lot of residents within these states, New York, North Carolina, etc., or you guys speaking to your restoration contractors out there, was there a lot of hesitancy of hiring out-of-state contractors? Because I know with this thing touching so many states, probably a lot of people didn't necessarily need to travel. But I have to imagine, again, if you're located down in Florida, I don't doubt, I know at least one contractor, but there's probably quite a few of us down in the South Florida area that definitely shot up to some of these other states. And I'm just kind of wondering how warm of a welcome it was from those residents, or if there's just been that scare, that fear that has been put in their brains that you cannot hire an out-of-state contractor. Let's see what you got, Clark. Another subject discussed might be the cash flow constraint. Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. People were not that interested in who was coming. People were not, from my experience during the immediate surge, people were not that interested in who was coming. Okay. Rephrase that for me if you don't mind, Clark, just so I can kind of better understand what you're saying there. Um, but while you kind of rephrase that there, cash flow, absolutely. The adrenaline fear caused homeowners to just want. Okay, see that's scary. What Clark just said, the adrenaline fear caused homeowners to just want anyone. That is scary. That is the absolute polar opposite. Now, as a consumer in a disaster area where you're kind of already short on the pickings, yes, I think there needs to be some level of acceptance, meaning if you're the one that always does your homework, your extensive research, and then picks a company and then interviews them and then compares it to 3 quotes, I don't think, well, I know you're not going to be afforded that luxury during these events, but I also don't think that you should necessarily just hire anyone. And I know it's easier said than done because I'm not standing there in a foot and a half of water with a pipe still shooting water on me, so I don't want to come across dismissive of how I would feel in that instance because, again, that's a place I've fortunately not been in, and I can only imagine. But you definitely want to at least do your due diligence in the sense that, at the very least, as a consumer, you should be getting a copy of any licensure. If it's an out-of-state licensure, if it's an applicable service, mitigation in a lot of states is not necessarily regulated from the viewpoint of licensure. In Florida, for example, you could be a carpet cleaning professional that just goes and does drying services as well. It's not until you actually get into the over 10 square feet of mold situation where you actually need to be licensed. So I definitely think that you should get a copy of an individual's license if it is applicable, if they do have one in that state, a copy of their insurance, and not just take a copy of the insurance. I'd probably call the number on it. If it's after hours, maybe you kind of roll the dice on the initial part, but you better believe the next business day, you want to call the number on that license just to make, or excuse me, the insurance policy, just to make sure that their insurance hasn't lapsed. Believe it or not, not everyone in this industry is on the up and up. So you can have a document that's been fabricated. PDF programs are a blessing to some of the crooks. So make sure you're doing your due diligence. I mean, of course, basic areas like Better Business Bureau, maybe asking around town, maybe even, looking up their reviews online from, if they're a company out of state, look up and see what they're doing in their local area. I mean, if they're ripping people off where, they eat, sleep, and breathe, chances are they're probably going to do it to you there. But anyway, so let me see. Clark, you chime back in. So I will say this. The sheer size, there was not an overabundance of out-of-town because everyone stayed home. So that's kind of what I figured, Clark. And that's, as much as I can speak to some of the restorative actions, it didn't sound like a whole lot of people were traveling other than, like I said, folks down in my neck of the woods because, we're close enough to the equator where we don't have pipe freezes. Robert Moore chimed in, these events have a lot of pop companies and other companies saying they do mitigation. Yeah, so you also have that as well. Another telltale way for a consumer to have an idea of if somebody is a professional or a pop-up professional, take a look at their equipment. If so I let's not completely judge a book by its cover. I will tell you, I have capitalized on a lot of deals over the years on used equipment. So I've got red equipment, blue equipment, green equipment, etc. Right? So to say you should just look at the equipment and it tells you everything, I think it's kind of a little bit of a misleading falsity there. Is falsity a word? I should say falsity. I said falsity. But what I will say is if they look like they've got just absolute random pieces of equipment, metal dehumidifiers and then little plastic ones, everything looks beat to all hell. The air movers that they have, or the fans, the centrifugal air movers, which look like little snails, if they're missing cages on the side, if there's wires hanging out, and simply put, if it looks like they don't give a shit about their equipment, pardon my French, that's probably more of a pop-up professional. This is probably somebody that has maybe been looking to get into this side of the industry, but hasn't gotten there yet, and they just kind of jumped at this opportunity to get some equipment in there. And unfortunately, that's not the company you're going to want working there. You're going to want companies, in a perfect world, you want a company that's got equipment with ID tags, maybe some sort of scanning system, if they've got little like Bluetooth beacons. I mean, these are companies that take pride in their work. I hate to say it, even having equipment that has numbers, a numbering system on it with a magic marker. I mean, something like that. A lot of guys actually do it just because of just how quick we have to bring on new equipment and everything. Sometimes you don't have time to do the barcode thing. But what you really want to look out for is just making sure you don't have Chuck in a truck coming in to do something that's a little bit above their pay grade. They might be fine at sucking water out of properties, but quite frankly, they may not have any business putting in dehumidification, air movers, wall injection systems, floor drying systems. There's a little bit of an art to drawing, and actually knowing your numbers and knowing your atmospheric conditions and things like that. It's not just throwing equipment in there. I could tell you from the past of even when I thought I knew what I was doing compared to now actually knowing the science behind drying. It's night and day what you can accomplish in a fraction of the time. And I'm definitely rambling on here. So let me get back to what. So not like Ian where it was all in one area. Yeah. So just like Robert and Clark are talking about, just doing your due diligence. And I mean, restoration professionals too. I mean, we could definitely do better. If you don't have the financials to actually go and work event, and I'm not talking as an individual, as someone who literally packed up and when I think it was to Hurricane Florence, after just putting up on Facebook that I'm looking to be a fly on the wall, not looking to make a dime. Obviously, I'll take money if you want to pay me, but I don't see myself as qualified at that point. I just want to go and I want to experience a storm event, right? I want to see how things are done. And I was lucky enough to dry out. I think it was the first job we had there was a 3-story nightclub. And it was just fascinating to work with some of the professionals I worked with at the time. And again, I'm glad I didn't go up there because I would have brought all my equipment up there. I would have probably forgotten all the generators. So I would have gotten up there, had absolutely no power, not knowing what to do. So it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's not only labor intensive work, but it's also figuring out logistics when it comes to just not even manpower, just how things work, right? You know, you have to know things. Either, I don't have it here, but you either got a circuit tester that is going to tell you when you're overloading a circuit, so that way you're not walking away knowing that you've got an 80% load on that breaker, and that's just going to pop the second you leave, right? I mean, gone are the days of just plugging things in, sticking around for 15 minutes, and seeing if the breaker trips, right? I think we've improved as an industry beyond that. But if you're not fortunate enough to have power and you have to run off of generators, it's like, what size generator do you get? How many generators? I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't know. It's not my forte. I would absolutely, undeniably, and I would smile the whole way, hire one of these large loss consultants or large loss contractors that can come out, drop a desiccant, drop a generator, and just set it up. Why? Because that's their livelihood. That's what they know. I know a lot about mold. I know a very fair amount, a very good amount at this point about water damages and how it works, right? I mean, the more experience you get on the building science side, the more you kind of have to know how all of these, the inner workings of everything. I don't claim for a second to be an expert when it comes to even large loss. I know how to moisture map. I know how to moisture map very well. I know how to assist in identifying and categorizing losses based on, the bacterial load on a project. Whether or not it's something that should be present. Is it gram negative? Is it gram positive? What does the CDC have to say about these things? Where is this actually taking place? Is this just a residence that just has run-of-the-mill healthy people, or is this a elderly senior living facility, right? Is it a daycare? I mean, these are all things that you need to know. There's so much stuff that needs to know, and I'm actually excited. Another reason I'm excited for doing a little bit of this podcast and getting new people on here is to start to learn things, such a terrible word, but start to acquire knowledge of areas that I lack in skill at or lack in knowledge at, right? And get a lot more information from there. Clark's chiming in again with some comments. I would hope that anyone participating in this event will make a very solid plan to have a session for deep assessment of everything. Yeah, absolutely. After action, what worked, what didn't work. Oh, what did we document well? So that's the big thing, right? Is the ability to self-reflect. I think that is probably one of the most important traits that anyone can have, right? Just in your personal life, as a business professional. And I mean, I know my fiance can hear me in the other room just rolling her eyes at some of this stuff, but fortunately for me, I think I'm very good at self-reflecting. I don't think I'm very good at making changes to things that I recognize I'm doing wrong at times, and a lot of times, but I, unlike a lot of people and professionals out there, have the ability to self-reflect and look at it and go, that was probably a stupid idea, or I probably should have done this differently, or actually have the heart to say, you know what, I really screwed the pooch on that one. And I will say, in this industry, there's not a lot of those. This industry, as well as probably, I shouldn't even just pick on this industry. It goes on in a lot of trades. People are quick to, he did it. And I think I saw something on Facebook recently that, mentioned we want to get away from that's not my job, or that's not my responsibility, or that's not me, that's not, it's this guy, it's that guy. Extreme ownership. Take what is rightfully yours, own it, correct it, address it. I know that as a restoration professional, unrelated to everything that I do on the industrial hygiene side, I'm working closely with my team to put together a better plan for 2023, right? Things have worked to this point. On the surface, on the front end, what clients see, we look like rock stars. We probably look like, if not the best, one of the best mold remediation companies out there on a lot of topics, or on a lot of different elements, right? There's definitely things that I can, say that, hey, this probably doesn't look great, that doesn't look great, but in general, there's things that we can do better on the back end. Like Clark just mentioned here, going back and self-reflecting, what could we better document? Documentation is kind of the root of all evil. So if you don't have a good platform for documenting, if you want to do it via photos with something like Company Cam, you want to utilize something like Encircle, Clean Claims, which is process-driven. So many platforms out there now. It seems like if you're not manufacturing restoration equipment and selling it, you are involved in one facet or another with producing restoration software, right? That's the new craze. Everyone wants to be part of the restoration software industry and things like that, because quite frankly, it's a lot of these, we know how profitable the restoration industry is, but without thinking terribly of these individuals, unfortunately, we also know how much of a mess it is, right? We got lots of people still using Excel spreadsheets. I mean, I, for one, approach things using a CRM to do a lot of what bigger companies can't do, because for every one project that we have, these companies have 5 or 6, right? We fulfill much more of a niche remediation segment, I think is the right word that I'm looking for, versus your run-of-the-mill mold remediation company doing traditional remediation, not working with any hypersensitive individuals, not doing any specialty type things. They may have 3-4 remediation projects, 5-6 a week, where they're actually just coming in and it's just kind of rolling through them. And they're not doing anything wrong. It's just a different market that they're working within. And the documentation process, what works for me isn't going to work for them. And equally, what's going to work for them might be absolute overkill for what I need. So looking into ways that you can better. I mean, 2023 here, if you haven't already heard the term automation, talk to Kevin Dooley. Talk to me. Clark, I'm assuming you're an automation guy. If you're not, then just put no. Don't call Clark. But there's a lot of people that are absolute forward-thinking individuals that are looking at things. I mean, Kevin Dooley, for example, has got aside from his whole restoration background, he's got a platform called Kahi. I think it's kahi.io is the website, right? And he, in its most core sense, offers asset management, or excuse me, asset tracking. He also incorporated, and their team, I shouldn't say he, there's definitely a team here, they work with companies like Raven to be able to offer a safer, monitored driving experience for the drivers, as well as being able to track the assets to and from locations, destinations, the ability to recognize who's behind the steering wheel. So just that's only the tip of the iceberg here, right? You've got that. You've got things like Lane Larson's doing with Clean Claims, where he's incorporated sensors and even locked out the end user from being able to make adjustments here to where it's a much more objective report that gets produced at the end. So what I'm getting at, if you're not already seeing the writing on the walls, is if you are still doing things via pen and paper, I think there's a time and a place for that. But you need to get up with you need to get up with the times. There's going to be a lot of automation, a lot more than we currently have. I mean, even things that on the surface do not connect with one another, aren't necessarily compatible. You have third-party integrations like Zapier or Zapier, Zapier.com if you haven't heard of it, which is allowing you to connect your QuickBooks online accounting software to your Zendesk Sell CRM just through cloud communication. So things are just so much easier than when I started in the industry, which wasn't even that long ago. A lot of you guys have been in it a lot longer than I have, but 2006, I mean, that's a milestone for me. Things have changed tremendously. We didn't have then what we have now, and things are only improving. The dehumidifiers are now coming equipped with Bluetooth communication, where you can actually walk onto a project and with the press of a button actually collect all of your input and output readings on all of your dehumidifiers, rather than going around and sticking a hygrometer on the inlet, sticking a hygrometer on the output, waiting for it to acclimate. I mean, it's just absolute chaos, this automation thing. So automation is important, but only after you have a foundational understanding of what you are trying to automate. True story, my friend, and that is more your forte. Business plan, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you that I know what I want to automate, but it's just through trials and tribulations, successes and failures, that there's certain things that I can automate and there's certain things that I can't automate, and there's certain things that we still need to do. But certain elements, in my professional opinion, equipment, asset management, there is absolutely no reason any technician should be scanning a piece of equipment into a vehicle and then scanning it out. Why? Because it requires a technician, and there is the potential for he or she to forget to scan said asset. Number two, it is a slower process. It is a more costly process, possibly, depending on what you're paying for the software, but time is money. And if you're spending a lot of time scanning assets to and from, you might want to look at something that's completely hands-off, that's just going to pick up different signals when it goes in a vehicle, when it gets left at a property. These things do exist, but I do agree with what Clark said. You gotta kind of know your why, right? You gotta have the foundation, the fundamental understanding of things. The best restorers is always asking what's next. Absolutely. What else can I be improving? Lastly, automation is the way to address automation is the way to go to address the labor shortage that is not going away. Yeah, excellent point. Actually, let's talk about that for a second. Labor's hard to come by. A lot of us have a lot of the same faces in our company, right? And we struggle to find new faces. I know that, I think it was probably, might have actually been a year and a half now, maybe even longer. Sandy, my better half, was kind enough to line up, I think, about 8 interviews on one day, and it was a tight schedule. I think it was like every hour on the hour. It might have been 7. One individual showed up. One individual. And actually, I think this might have been 2 years back now. But either way, my point being, good quality labor, individuals, persons. I don't want to say labor because there are a lot more than that. Human beings. But these people are hard to come by. People that actually give a damn and want to wake up and come to work and not just complain about, their home life and everything else that's potentially going wrong, right? They may have a great home life. They may not. But when they're at work, they're at work. Finding people, not even with skill sets, just that have the willingness and eagerness to learn, are far and few between. So looking to automation to solve some of these labor shortages can absolutely be a way to do it, right? We all cannot attack things like the big Belfour does. I'm astonished every time, and even Cotton. Belfour I can speak to just seeing and being exposed to more often. The fact that these folks can show up and deploy hundreds of people and maintain this, what I can only consider as a logistical nightmare, it comes down to those systems and processes that they have in place, which is more than likely, obviously, what Clark was talking about here. You can't really automate things until you have systems and processes, right? Again, it's not my expertise. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase and reiterate what others are saying here. But just being able to see what these folks can accomplish is absolutely unreal. And, us little guys out there, because, my restoration company is composed of 5, if you count myself, 6 of us, right? And I'm about as hands-off as it gets when it comes to that, when I can help it. That's a pretty small company. I'm not tackling too large of a loss here. And if I am, I'm calling in reinforcements versus you got some of these big players that just kind of roll in semi-trailers deep, people coming out of the woodworks, and some with experience, some without experience, and just the ability to just manage this. It's, my hat that I don't have, my hat goes off to these folks. But anyway, at this point, I'm just kind of, rambling on. Next week, I'd love to tell you what's going to be in next week's episode, but I don't know. But here's what I will tell you. I'm going to be setting aside some time this week. I actually want to plan out probably the next 3 or 4 episodes that I'm going to do. I'd like to give everyone here more than about an hour or two's notice, which has kind of been my unfortunate claim to fame the past not 2 weeks here, not 2 consecutive weeks, but 2 episodes is just kind of dropping it. Hey, we're going live at 8 o'clock. I do still fully intend on running across multiple platforms, LinkedIn and Facebook, albeit I kind of want everyone to come to YouTube. I also understand that, not everyone has an account on YouTube, and we all digest or, acquire? What's the word I'm looking for? We all view things. Let's just start over. Facebook Live is going to be in play. LinkedIn Live, if that's a thing, is going to be in play, and YouTube. So wherever you want to consume your content, that's the phrase I was looking for. Absolutely, be sure to do it. I'm going to make sure that I'm broadcasting on all 3 of these platforms. What I will ask, if this is something you are interested in seeing more of, I do like pats on the back, believe it or not. I would love for you to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, to my content, if you see fit. What I don't want you to do is just go on and do it because I told you to do it. While I appreciate it, I'd really rather it be a little bit genuine. So if there's anything I can do better, other than not go down rabbit holes, which I can make no promises to avoid, do let me know. Shoot me an email. If you go to iaqjosh.com, I'm already forgetting my URL. I do have the link there. Perfect. So iaqjosh.com, that website literally exists solely so folks can get on there, figure out ways to get in contact with me. If you do want to stalk me, I'm going to be happy to put up events that I'll be attending just in case. But more importantly, if it's an opportunity that you're looking to connect with me and kind of sit down and meet face to face, that's going to be the way to do it. My email address is in there. Believe it or not, I did put my direct cell in there as well. I encourage questions. I encourage comments. You want to talk about anything? I'm more than happy to. If you feel I misspoke on any subjects, extreme ownership. Try not to call me out publicly, but if you feel it's really worthwhile, then do so. Otherwise, just shoot me a direct message. I would greatly appreciate it. And stay tuned here. Like I said, I'm going to get the next couple of weeks' content posted, and we've come up on our 1 hour. So, Clark Brown, thank you. I appreciate you being my probably a co-host at this point for helping me out with this one. We'll probably actually grab you on the show at some point here. But nonetheless, thank you all for coming out and joining me and viewing, and I will talk to everyone soon. Have a great evening.